There's a name for that, right? But you know, but we never know people's stories, right? We never know that she was moms. I didn't know that she was moms because of her care for people on the so-called chitlin circuit. And this is a time to remind ourselves, you know, we didn't have the Holiday Inn, the Marriott that you could go to. You didn't have Howard Johnson, all that. You stayed in smaller hotels or in people's homes. And I'm sure that people like Moms Mabley made it tolerable. You know, made it a little bit better. Said, baby, that's just, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. You know, we're going to be all right. So we give thanks, and I ask all of my elders for permission to continue, if it's all right.
Yes, sir.
And we give all the elders a round of applause this morning. We give thanks for another day, because we know that this day is not promised to us. We are grieving and celebrating the life of Hadia Shakir today. She's one of our daughters. She is the daughter of Fahima, Mama Fahima, who lives just a few blocks from here, actually on Plymouth. And Fahima, for years, was part of Bantuba Dance Ensemble. Her daughter was unfortunately killed here in East Oakland last week. Innocent bystander, not doing anything she wasn't supposed to be doing. And unfortunately, that becomes a story too often. So this afternoon, they're having she was a Muslim, so they're having the Islamic celebration right now. And then at 3 o'clock over at East Oakland Youth Development Center, there'll be a larger community celebration of her life. And she leaves 2 children. And so we just know that we have so much to do in our community to make it safe. We have so much to do in our community to take the guns out of the hands of our children. We have so much to do to heal the hurt that is in our community. So this morning, or this afternoon now, I want to just share a few ideas with you, some things you already know. And that's always the job of the Babalawo, the preacher, the minister, you know, remind us of some things. And I'm going to remind you to be true to the divine in you. Be true to the spark of the divine in you. This is just not going to work today. This is the lazy stand. I'm going to ask you to, if you have a Hosea, turn to page 32 of the Hosea. And it's a familiar passage to many of you. We're going to read the second paragraph of passage number 3. And this theme of being true to oneself, being true to the divine in you, being true to spirit, being true to your community, being true to your values. The origin of the word true has to do with taking out the impurities. So often they will talk about truing metal, like gold. And that process of heating it up and letting the gold as the heaviest element drop to the bottom of a smelting pot and having the other impurities sort of rise up. But the idea of truing has to do with taking out the impurities, taking out the extra, taking out the things that aren't part of the substance that you're really trying to get to. So this morning, when we think about this idea of truing ourselves, we have an example that comes to us from the story of Kuanampu. And let's read this passage together, remind ourselves of the story, and then think about this idea in our own lives. So the second paragraph, passage number 3, reads this way, and we can read it together. The balancing of the land lies in Ma'at, truth, justice, and righteousness. Do not speak falsely, for you are great. Do not act lightly, for you have weight. Be not untrue, for you are the balance, and do not swerve, for you are the standard. You are on the level with the balance. If it tilts, then you will lean to. Do not drift, rather steer. Do not rob, rather act against the robber. For one is not really great if he is great with greed. If you turn your face from violence, who will punish wrongdoing? Be true to the divine in you. It says the balancing of the land lies in Ma'at. We can extend that to say the balancing of each of our lives lies in Ma'at. The balancing of any organization lies in Ma'at. The balancing of any community lies in Ma'at. This week I had an opportunity to have a couple of experiences that helped inform my thinking around this. The first thing that happened was I was in one of the things that happened was in a room yesterday with the Brotherhood Elders Network, a group I'm part of, and we had a visit from a delegation from South Africa. And they were part of the South African Local Government Association. And what they said was that when Nelson Mandela came into power back in 95, or 94, that he basically made an executive order, an edict, that there should be an association of all of the municipalities in South Africa, all of the incorporated cities. And at that time, there were 256 cities. And they didn't have any kind of organization to them. And so Mandela's thing was like, in order for our cities to begin to operate in a different kind of way, we need to have a conversation. We need to have an association. And they were in town because they wanted to learn more about what was happening in Oakland, but they also were going to have a 9-week experience, and maybe we can get them to come when they come back. 9-week experience with the Goldman School of Public Policy up at Cal. But what somebody said to them, rightfully, is you can have the conversation up on the hill at Cal, and you need to have a conversation with folks in the neighborhoods. You need to be down in the streets with the folks here. And what they said was it was interesting to them because as they moved around and they saw our unhoused folks and all of the folks living in tents under the bridges and all that, they said, we see this at home too. And they were shocked that they saw it here.
Wow.
They were shocked because, you know, the headline of the United States, this is the most prosperous country in the world, it's the most progressive country in the world, it's the leader of moral values in the world, which is just not true. And so they were kind of stunned at what they saw here in the streets of Oakland. This might got a mind of its own too. Over there, I'm gonna go here. All right. We're going to keep on going down. It's almost like a timer. It's like, you know, when you get to the bottom, you got to be done. Right? So, but that idea of being true, they came into this environment and they called it like they saw it. They were in a room with new friends as guests, but they said, but we don't understand what we're seeing. And so we had a conversation. On Wednesday and Thursday this week, I was in Stockton with a group, the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood, are doing some work around the state, working with folks to train people to hold healing circles. And I've been part of that work for the last few years and informally for the last 25 years. But in Stockton, there was a group of folks who work with an organization called Families and Fathers of San Joaquin Valley. They work with a lot of formerly incarcerated folks. They work with a lot of kids who are either at risk of being in juvenile hall or in juvenile hall and coming home. And they work with a lot of the trauma that's happening in Stockton. And Stockton, not that far away from here, as you know, about an hour and 15-minute drive. But Stockton has many of the same issues that Oakland has as a bigger city. The same kind of issues around homicides, the same kind of issues around poverty, the same kind of issues around tension. And interestingly, they have a young mayor. Some of y'all may know this, Michael Tubbs, a young man who was one of my son Kumi's classmates at Stanford. Michael's like not even 30, and he's the mayor of Stockton. And I had actually, the meeting that we had was in the same building as the community center, and he actually was coming over for another thing. It was part of their effort around the census, but just as personal as he can be, and he's effective in some ways because he grew up, having a hard time growing up in Stockton. So he didn't grow up with a silver spoon in his mouth. He grew up facing some of the same challenges that young people face, and so Michael is leading that community. But two of the other young folks, one younger guy, somebody probably a little bit younger than me, I met in this meeting. One was a formerly incarcerated brother. He had spent 20 years in jail and now is out working with young people. And, whenever I meet people who have been in jail for a long time, they're some of the most thoughtful, kindest, conscious people I've ever met. Because in many ways, I think because they've had a chance to focus on themselves.
Right.
They had a chance to focus on spirit within themselves.
Yeah.
Right? And so this brother who had been in prison for 20 years, and all of us have this. It's like there's certain words and certain phrases and certain things that people say, and when they say it, you say, "Oh, I know something about you." Right. And this brother made a comment. He in a passing reference to Kemet, and then he talked about Egypt, and he talked about being an Egyptian Freemason. That's how he described himself.
Wow.
Right.
And this was during the full group session. So at the break, I said, "Bro, we got to talk."
Right.
Because iron sharpens iron, right? So when you see somebody that's on the same kind of wavelength, you don't want to move toward them. The second person in that room was a young man, probably no more than about 26, 27 years old. And again, in his introduction, he mentioned a sect. I was like, wait a minute, where am I?
Right.
And so there are people out there. There are Africans out there who are interested in studying and applying these ideas to their own lives. This whole idea of having spirit in us.
Yes.
If we think about it, in life, we always find ourselves in a situation. Sometimes the situation is good.
Yeah.
It's easy. It's something you can handle without a whole lot of effort. Other times we find ourselves in situations that are challenging. We find our situations that are difficult. And this is the situation out of which this freedom writing comes, this scripture, this text from the Hosea. It comes out of a situation where a man named Kun Anpu, and you've heard this story before, many of you know this story, where Kun Anpu was trying to do a good thing for his family. He was trying to do something that he was supposed to do. He was supposed to take his goods because they had run out of food, and he's going to sell some things in the market. He's going to make his way many miles away from his home with all of his possessions that could be sold and be able to make it back to feed his family. And of course, like in life, he found himself in a situation.
Yeah.
He found himself in a situation where a rich man saw him, and because of his greed and arrogance, wanted to take all of Kuananpu's belongings. Everything. He wanted to take everything that had been packed onto Kuananpu's donkeys. All of his furs and all of the salt and all of the things he was bringing to sell in the market. Nimtimak, one who gets in the way of someone else's light, and that's the way his name translates, wanted to be the person that was going to make this situation uncomfortable and intolerable for Kuananpu. But Kuananpu, knowing that he's finding himself in a situation, knowing his tradition, sometimes that's all it takes. You have to remember your tradition. When you find yourself in a difficult situation, sometimes you just remind yourself, who are you? Who created you? Where do you come from? What are your fundamental values? Not all the extra. When you strip everything away, what are the things that actually make a difference? What are the things that you've been taught? It goes to that thing that some of our parents used to say to us when they would say, when you did something you weren't supposed to do, and they would say, you know better. Right. It's that same attitude of, you know something, now will you live it? You know something, you know a value, a principle of Nguzo Saba or Ma'at, but will you apply it to the situation? Not have it be sort of sitting up on a shelf somewhere. And so Kuananpu found himself in that situation. And he went around, after Nimtinak took his goods, he then petitioned to Renzi. He petitioned to someone who was in power to make justice happen. And he had a set of 9 different speeches. And if you unpack any of these speeches, you'll find a lot of wisdom about how to be true to the divine in you. You'll find a lot about how to be true to the divine so you can deal with whatever situation you might be in. And he reminds a leader, he reminds someone who's in power, the balancing of the land lies in ma'at, truth. It lies in justice. It lies in righteousness. It lies in harmony, balance, reciprocity, and order. He said you're going to find in that passage, he says he gives you a few things to sort of chew on. He says, do not speak falsely, for you are great. He says to him, don't make things up. Don't lie. Don't cover the truth. Right. Tell the truth and shame the devil, as Mama used to say. He said, don't speak. Do not act lightly, for you have weight. Don't sell yourself short. He says you are a great person, but if you don't act like a great person, your greatness will be lost. All of us have situations in our lives where we have a choice of acting great or not. Acting great does not always make people like you. Acting great is a divine standard. It's a standard that we see represented in all these images in this room. It's a standard that says you have to be true to that which is core to who you are. If you are in fact believe and know that you're a child of the Most High, then you have a legacy, a heritage, a birthright for truth, justice, and righteousness. It's not something that that somebody else had to give you. It's what your parents gave you. It's what your divine mother and father gave you. In the same way you leave something in a will that you leave to your children. When my parents died, they were very organized. And they had a will that they both wrote together before my dad passed away. And then when my dad passed, everything went to my mom, and she updated her will. But she was very clear about, I want certain people to have my sewing desk. That's my older sister. I want certain people to have a scrub board and an old butter churn. That was, I think, it was my little sister, right? She wanted me to have a few things. She wanted me to have my grandmother's furniture. She was very clear about what the legacy was going to be. The Most High has been very clear about what legacy has been given to each of us. The Most High is very clear that true justice and righteousness should be in our DNA. It should be in the way that we act in all situations. Not act out of fear, not act out of expediency, but that we should act in a way always that's true to the divine in us. That if we are true to our values, that we will pay attention to Ujima. That we will pay attention to what collective work and responsibility really mean. Sometimes I think that we, unfortunately, this community is part of this, and our larger community, sometimes we act like the values of the Nguzo Saba are only for Kwanzaa.
Teach, right?
Like the only time we ever supposed to challenge it, talk about it, use them is at Kwanzaa time. Those values are supposed to be lived every day of the year. Collective work and responsibility means collectively sharing information, collectively doing problem solving. What they call in the Congolese community in the Kikongo language, they call it Mbangi. Mbangi is a learning place, a problem-solving meeting, a place where we plead our case, a place where we critique and clarify issues. that idea of keeping oneself true to the divine means to have integrity. To have integrity with how we follow our practices. To have trustworthiness. To have respect. To have what our visitors from South Africa even referenced yesterday about Ubuntu. Mm-hmm. It was interesting. We were in a room at Policy Link offices over on Webster Street, and there's a piece of art there. There's two pieces of art there, actually. One piece of art is a poem that Shanaka Hodge, I think y'all heard of her, that Shanaka wrote in honor of Angela Glover Blackwell as she was leaving that organization as the CEO. And somebody took it and put it on a beautiful piece of art, and it's up in the office. And then the other thing that's up is a huge piece that says Ubuntu. Mm. So it's like almost like at every place, it's being reminded of I am because we are because I am. Mm-hmm. And what the visitors from our brothers and sisters from South Africa said, they said that we are, and it reminded me of our situation, they said we are at risk of losing that Ubuntu attitude. Mm. And it came out in the conversation because somebody asked about the politics, and there's a lot of people who came out of the ANC who, after Mandela came into power, they were some of the younger folks, and they basically said, we are tired of being poor, so we're going to use these government jobs to get rich. That's not an Ubuntu idea. And what they said to us yesterday is while we're watching black folk get rich in South Africa, the brothers and sisters still don't have land. Brothers and sisters still don't have food. Brothers and sisters still don't have education. Brothers and sisters still get called out of their name by white folks, which, by the way, it's against the law in South Africa to call somebody a kafir. And kafir is the equivalent of the N-word. But they have some laws in place now that say you will go to jail if you use it. So it's causing people in the society to wonder, have we lost our way? Have we lost our path? And so this idea of Ubuntu, this idea of we are because I am, causes us to have to be true to other people. We have to be true to our family. To be in divine order, you got to be true to both your biological family and your chosen family. Some of us have only our biological extended family is great, and some people, because of the quality of those families, have chosen other people to be in family with. Ashe? Sometimes you just got to be in family with somebody else. Right. Because sometimes your birth family, maybe spiritually you chose them, but they are not for you. Ashe? Ashe. We have to be true to our community. We got to be helpful and useful to people in some kind of way. As this passage says, and this is for anybody who's in any community role of any sort or small, this passage it says, do not drift, rather steer. Drifting is not a good thing. Just going along and floating along and letting things happen and just say it's going to be okay. That is not our way. Nope. That is not how we were ordained to do this work. It says that you are on the level with the balance. You are the standard. If you tilt, if you wobble, if you lose your way, then who will be in that role to be that model for the next person? Who will be the person that you could say did not swerve? Who will be the person where you would say do not drift but rather steer? I thought about this a while back, and some of the language is kind of out of my childhood. We used to ride bicycles a lot. And some of you all had bicycles too. And then every now and then your tire would get a whop in it. Right. Yeah. Now, whop, right? We used to say whop. Your tire get a whop in it. When you have to write these words down, I had to write that word down to do this. I was like, whop. Like, I had never seen anybody spell it, Because whop is the way we used to say warp. Yeah. A whop is a warp. Yeah. So you got a warp in your tire. But we used to say whop. You got a whop in your tire. And what that meant was your tire was out of alignment. Yeah. When you ride, it's going back and forth, right? When you had the newer, what used to be the new brakes, the hand brakes, you could tell your tire was out of alignment because that tire was going to be hitting on either side of those brakes. And you couldn't go as fast. So you had to do what? You had to get the whop out of your tire. Right. Ashe? We need to get the whop out of our lives. Ashe? Sometimes we are warped, we are swinging side to side and not going straight ahead. And it's interesting because now, when you go to a bike shop, now the popular bike shops and all that stuff, what do they call that process of getting a whop out the tire? They call it truing a tire. Wow. We have to true a tire. And what's the process for truing a tire? They set it on a fork, or they turn the bike upside down, set it on a fork, and you can see the tire. So you spin it, and you see it going side to side, right? The process is you now have to tighten every spoke, or loosen every spoke in the tire, because it's the spokes that are pulling that tire into a certain kind of alignment. Usually, if you break a spoke, that's when you get a whop in your tire. or you bend a spoke, right? So the process is you have to very meticulously spend the time with a little certain wrench, tightening or loosening those spokes. And then and the process, you do a few. You can't do them all at one time because you don't know exactly which side is pulling. So you do one or two, and you spin the tire, and you see if it's a little bit less going side to side and all straight ahead, right? It's a great metaphor for our lives. Because if something's a problem, something's going wrong, sometimes you got to start looking at every single thing that you're about and tightening it up. Or letting it go. Tightening it up or loosening it. Right. Tightening up on your idea about what does it mean to say truth. Tightening up on what does it mean to be in balance and in harmony with your brothers and sisters. Not telling people what to do, but figuring it out in a mbongi kind of way. What does it mean to tighten your application of the idea of truth, justice, and righteousness, right? What does it mean to then loosen some of the spokes? Let go of the backbiting. Let go of the gossip. Let go of the fear. Let go of the things that are not healthy for us. Ashe?
Ashe.
So that idea, get a whop out your life. Right. Ashe. We all got to get a whop out of our life. Get a whop out of our community. To basically align things and make sure that things are working the way they should work. We have to be true to our family, true to our community, true to our spirit. You have to do what your spirit is. You know your spirit is handling things in a certain way. You have to be true to your spirit. No matter what else is going on, you got to be true to your spirit. Ashe?
Ashe.
You have to have an internal compass for this journey that we call life. You have an internal sense of what is right and what is wrong, and we are called to follow that. If you don't follow that, then you're not being true to yourself. Ashe?
Ashe.
You have to be ultimately aligned, my behavior, my speech, my thinking with divine purpose. Am I aligned with intentions and impact? We have to pay attention to intention and impact. Sometimes we intend something, but we didn't necessarily intend the impact, but that's part of the deal. If you do something that's out of order, you might not have intended for you to run into somebody's car or hurt someone or whatever happened, but your impact, the impact of your intentions is part of it. You got to deal with both. You can't just deal with what you meant. You got to deal with what happened. Right. Ashe?
Ashe.
We have to continue to ask ourselves, am I aligned with reality? Am I aligned with the real situation? Have I taken the blinders off? Have I taken somehow I think the truth and justice is something else, but have we taken the blinders off and be aligned with reality? To be in lock and in step and in tune and in balance with our divine selves, we have to ask ourselves, am I in lockstep with righteousness? Have I trued my path? Or am I going side to side when I should be going straight ahead? God requires us, the Most High requires us. Am I in agreement, in alignment with God's plan for me? Sometimes God has a plan for you and you be pushing back. Ashe? There's certain things that you have to be true to the divine, because sometimes the Most High is saying you need to do this and you just like, I don't want to do that. That's not comfortable. Right. It's not what I had on my life plan. Mm-hmm. It's not what I wrote in my journal last week about what I was going to do. This is something that we have to continually ask. We have to ask ourselves, in order to be true with the divine in us, am I accountable for my part of creation? Am I accountable for my behavior? Am I accountable for the things that I have control over? Am I a steward for justice and peace? We have to be true to the divine in us. We have to be true to our story, true to our values. Just like that tire, we have to do little things along the way to tune things up, to get in line. We have to do things along the way to ensure that the balancing of the land lies in mind. Truth, justice, and righteousness. Do not speak falsely, for you are great. Do not act lightly, for you have weight. Be not untrue, for you are the balance, and do not swerve, for you are the standard. You are on the level with the balance. If it tilts, then you will lean too. Do not drift, rather steer. I'm around to
Ashe.
we thank you. Stand, if you will.